Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting here at Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. A few housekeeping things to start us off with. Fire and evacuation procedures for this evening. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. As is customary, the webcast of the meetings has started and Julia has confirmed that. So please note for members and members of the public that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. And if I could ask everybody to either turn their phones off or turn their phones on silent, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to go to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence, and I have one apology, which is Councillor Vox. And then if I could ask my colleagues if anybody has any declarations of interest for any of the items on this evening's agenda. No declarations. Thank you very much. Then we move on to urgent matters. I don't have any urgent matters on my desk for this evening. Minutes then of the meeting held on the 8th of March 2022. Are you ready? Are you happy that I sign those as a true and accurate record of the meeting in March? Agreed? Yeah. Thank you very much. Then we have appointments to executive committees. First of all, we have the Basingview Executive Committee, which needs 3 members of Cabinet, excluding the portfolio holder for planning and infrastructure. Current members are Councillors Bean and Councillor Isett, and I would like to nominate Councillor Carr to join that committee. Are we agreed? We are, thank you very much. And then moving to the Manydown Executive Committee, which again comprises of 3 members of Cabinet, excluding the leader, the portfolio holder for planning and infrastructure. That's currently Councillor Bean and Councillor Isett, and again, I'd like to recommend that we have Councillor Carr join them. Is that agreed? Yeah. Brilliant, thank you very much. Then moving on, item 6, the motion referred to Council on referred from Council on the 28th of February about the additional support to Basingstoke Citizens Advice Bureau. I am going to take that with item 15, the revenue outturn report. It seems appropriate that we do those 2 things at the same time, if everybody's happy with that. So if we can go to item 7, which is the motion referred from Council on the 24th of March 2022, the local plan update housing figure. Councillor Ganesh, I don't know whether you wanted to say something at this point.
Thank you, Leader. We're happy to take that motion, accept it, because as a council, we do not support this national government's current approach to setting housing needs, and we should consider further what a suitable housing requirement for the borough may be based on the local circumstances. So further work will also including the review of detailed information from the 2021 census, the detailed one that will be available from the winter onwards to assess whether there are exceptional circumstances in terms of the housing needs figure. So we'll use next few months to explore various options, those combination to inspect trade.
Following the unanimous vote of every member of this council, incredibly strong to make sure we do the real support when it comes to creating our next local plan. So thank you for that work. Then Bean.
Thank you, Leader. Just to be brief, we welcome the motion from full council, and it's just next steps in terms of how we do this. So
4 minutes, and I'll remind you when you have 30 seconds left.
All right, so thank you, Leader. So here's a statement I prepared earlier. It would be easy to view this as a motion passed just before the start of the short campaign of the local election, and say things like, we're already doing a lot to tackle litter in the borough, but the simple fact is that we do have a problem in the eyes of the public with litter at key locations. This is evidenced by the numerous community litter picks being organised across the borough by an army of local residents not content with the status quo and who are prepared to get up and do something about it. Don't get me wrong, Our street cleaners work very hard and do an excellent job. As a veteran of many such community picks in Norden, Brookvale, Winklebury and Brighton Hill, I can vouch for the fact that in many areas the litter was hard to find. But the problem is not getting better. We see more and more councillors of all parties, except the Lib Dems, now appearing at litter picks. We even had Maria Miller MP picked with a picture with a pick in hand at Rooksdown one time. And all the local volunteers, I'm sure, would benefit from the help, support and advice of Keep Britain Tidy. It is to date the most high-profile campaign on litter, and it's testimony to the nature of the problem that it is still going after 40 years. We as a council also need to do better in our enforcement role and engagement with local businesses. We have hotspot areas around our local shops, especially takeaways. The shops at Brighton Hill are case in point, with high footfall and ongoing problems with insufficient bins regularly overflowing and car users dumping litter in the car park. And a council with a reputation of sitting back and saying, it's not our responsibility, and leaving it to the community to clear it up, when we have a statutory duty to enforce environmental standards on a commercial landlord that refuses to engage. Therefore, I would urge you to take the opportunity to share best practice, the benefits that come from the great Keep Britain Tidy initiative, with a view to solving our more difficult problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Councillor Bean, I don't know whether you wish to respond to any of those points.
I think obviously portfolios need to be. I think generally our areas are well maintained and kept. If there are specific issues that councillors have, then I'm more than happy for them to contact me. It sounds like you have a particular hotspot that you've just mentioned, and obviously we'll take those on a case-by-case basis. So I think at this point, get the sentiment of what you're saying. I think generally things are good, but if there are particular problems, then please just drop me an email and we can take it from there.
I think it's also fair to recognise, isn't it, some of the points you made, Councillor McCormick, are regarding huge numbers of our councillors out litter picking. I'm pleased to report that I have spotted Maria Miller out litter picking in several parts of her constituency. And also things like don't be a tosser is actually part of best practice out there, speaking to lots of my colleagues regarding dealing with litter picking across the nation. And also, however frustrating it is fair to say that there is always, sadly, too much litter and too many people who are prepared to litter compared with the resources that anybody could put into that. So there is something about changing that behaviour which we all need to focus on within our communities. So thank you very much. So moving then on to item 9, which is the motion referred from Council on the 24th of March 2022 on Old Down. I believe we have a public speaker with us, Michael Cook, from the Old Down and Beggarwood Conservation Group and Natural Basingstoke. Welcome, Mr. Cook. You have 2 minutes to address the meeting, and as I did before, I will give you 30 seconds notice when the 2 minutes is up. Thank you very much, Mr. Hook. I apologise that I've got your name wrong. Councillor Eaches, would you like to speak to the paper?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just briefly to support what you've said and to thank the volunteers in Old Down. And yes, I agree, it's a very important area, not just for the residents that live near it, but actually for the whole of Basingstoke and Dean. And I think the parliamentary petition Maria did that got a number of signatures showed that, and it was great that the motion got the support of everybody at full council. So really just to say that I do support this, I do see the positive in it being an LNR status, and I want to work with officers to get it an LNR status as soon as we possibly can.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Councillor Eaches. I think it's also important for us to recognise that any future planning around that location, it's really important that we consider, I know lots of the issues that Natural Basingstoke have brought to us before regarding those green corridors and how important that site is for all sorts of purposes, as well as the leisure aspects, but really important as far as that local wildlife. So thank you very much. Then moving on to item 10, which is the recommendation to Cabinet from the Scrutiny Committee held on the 21st of June, which is in considering the motion referred from Council regarding the Winkelbury Regeneration Project, the Scrutiny Committee recommended to Cabinet to engage with Vivid to consider the views of the Scrutiny Committee following a meeting to be arranged. We have two visiting speakers, which is Councillor Lee and Councillor Compton Burnett. I don't know whether you had a preference. Who would like to go first? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Leader. Whilst preparing the speech today, I decided to take a look at your most recent manifesto that you put forward as part of the local elections this year. And I noticed that the line, and I quote, "respect for people," which means consideration for those whose projects impact. But as the Ward Councillor for Winkelbury and Manydown, it's very apparent that the residents currently don't feel they are being respected by this council, and they certainly don't feel that their considerations have been listened to. What's worse, they are frustrated to see that the leader of the council and member for the adjacent ward asking residents of his ward for input on a survey to ensure that Bramley's Grange provides the right services for them, whilst at the same time being denied the opportunity to have the right facilities for their community. The provision of infrastructure and services for our communities isn't a hidden issue here in Basingstoke. We are openly discussing it as part of the local plan update, and it's important that during these discussions we consider all our communities and their needs both now and into the future. Now, the National Planning Policy Framework states that planning policies and decisions should consider the social, economic and environmental benefits of estate regeneration, and that local planning authorities should use their planning powers to help deliver estate regeneration to a high standard. To me, that means we have the ability, and more importantly the powers, to make sure that this development is carried out correctly to a high standard, ensuring that it benefits everybody involved. But to do this, we need your help. We need you to support us as ward councillors to help us hold those who are responsible for the delivery of this regeneration to account, to bring them to the table and to have the difficult conversations, to review what decisions have been taken to date, what methods have been used to come to these decisions, and to shape the regeneration project so that it does provide that benefit long into the future. I believe the referral listed on the papers from recollection of attending the scrutiny committee, seems a little light in terms of its request. It certainly misses a large number of stakeholders who can help make this review successful. Whilst Vivid will be leading this regeneration, many groups and individuals will be able to help shape this review into success. The portfolio holder, Hampshire County Council, officers from our council, local councillors and the Integrated Care Board, and most importantly, residents themselves through Winkelbury and Manydown Community Action Group. Through your help, we can urge people to come together and provide a proper, informed discussion on how any review should progress, who should do what and by when. Now, all we as ward councillors of opposing parties want is a successful outcome for our residents, one that can deliver more housing for people, but more importantly, an outcome that delivers the right infrastructure, provides a benefit to the community and builds cohesion amongst residents for years to come. I'm likely going to hear that it's not the responsibility of this council to get involved, and I think that is wrong. Both Hampshire County Council and this council own significant plots of land that Vivid rely on to be able to deliver this regeneration. Whilst I don't advocate holding them to ransom, we need to strike a fine balance on being told what we will have and what we as a council want to see for our residents. We need Vivid to hear us strongly advocate for our communities, because at the moment, residents of Winkelbury and Manydown are tired of not being heard. They are tired of hearing words but seeing no action to resolve their concerns. They care about the future of their families, their neighbours and their community, and they want those in power in Basingstoke to stand up for them and not make excuses. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Compton-Burnett.
Thank you. I wanted just to be here to demonstrate that this has cross-party support among the councillors in Winklebury, and to echo Councillor Lee's comments about the importance of this to the community in Winklebury.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Leader. Bringing in new investment to Winklebury is a top priority for this administration. As a Cabinet, we've long recognised the need to regenerate the Winklebury Centre and its surroundings, noting the need to enhance the residential and retail accommodation. We have also understood the significant levels of unaddressed affordable housing need within Winklebury, with just 7 new affordable homes delivered in the ward over the last 15 years, compared to more than 4,000 across the borough in that same period. After an incredible amount of work and close collaboration with Basingstoke and Deane, Hampshire County Council and the Integrated Care Service, Vivid has now presented a once-in-a-lifetime £60 million regeneration package that will transform the Winklebury Centre, Fort Hill and the Play Council site for the benefit of residents. These proposals are the result of years of extensive consultation and engagement with the community, including local residents, businesses, tenants of the Winklebury Centre and the Community Action Group. Continuous engagement has taken place with a host of key stakeholders throughout the formulation of this scheme, taking in borough councillors and Winklebury ward members past and present. And I thank Councillor Lee and Councillor Compton-Burnett for coming to speak this evening. These stakeholder and community conversations have resulted in meaningful evolution to the plans. Alongside the new homes, the regeneration scheme offers a modern new healthcare facility, play areas for young people, provision for the preschool, retail spaces for businesses, and the opening up of a green open space at Fort Hill in the heart of the ward. Now, as Cabinet members will remember, in March 2022, full council passed a motion asking us to further consider the progress of the Winklebury regeneration project, raising queries about the project's response to adopted plans and policies and requesting additional consideration of the proposed health and community provision. Since that motion was passed, I have taken the time, and my predecessor took the time, to review the proposals and engage directly with Vivid. In June 2022, members of the Scrutiny Committee met to discuss the motion and to debate next steps. I watched this meeting and have reflected on the views expressed by members. At my urging, Vivid has considered the motion and taken steps to amend its scheme to reflect the concerns raised by councillors. A number of these changes were outlined during a recent briefing to ward members on the 14th of June 2022, which I attended as Cabinet member. Following the motion, our partners have listened to the views of members and have reviewed their proposals to include a community provision. I hope Council recognises the significance of this move, as a specific community space was not part of the original vision for the Winklebury regeneration. I indicated to our partners that Cabinet was satisfied that they had responded to the motion, and so submission of the Winklebury application took place today, the 5th of July 2022, representing the first step in unlocking this essential scheme. It is important to me that this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to regenerate Winklebury for the benefit of local residents is not lost. Vivid has secured funding from Homes England to secure the scheme, but this finance is only guaranteed against a non-negotiable start-on-site deadline. So there are time considerations which need to be considered. I hope that Council will acknowledge that Vivid and its partners have made significant steps and changes to the Winklebury regeneration project as a result of the recent motion. Now that the application has been submitted and the formal planning process has begun, the scheme will be put through a thorough and independent process. As called for in the motion, it will be assessed against all relevant local and national policies. I want to be very clear. I've been quite clear with Vivid that they need to continue to take the views of the community into account. They need to continue to engage as part of the planning process. And so once the application is valid and live on the planning file, I would encourage stakeholders, councillors and residents to submit their comments to the planning file. The planning process will now form a new opportunity for residents to continue to feedback on this plan and provide their comments. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. I think it's also important, isn't it, just to add, as somebody who was involved in the initial conversations in 2015, 2016, to recognise how far this discussion has come. In 2015 and 16, there was not a health centre in the plans. In 2015-16, there was not a community facility in those plans. And I would just like to put on record the work of the current and past ward councillors to make sure those additions have appeared in that process. So thank you very much for the contributors for that item. Now we will move on to item 11, which is the draft strengthening community strategy. I believe, Councillor McCormick, you wanted to voice some comments.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Well, a comment and a question, really. It's a shame, really, that the portfolio holder isn't here to provide direct answers herself, because I imagine a lot of her effort has gone into this paper. My concern, I guess, is that we are in danger of becoming a two-tiered society, because the nature of this paper is to try and make things happen at community level by urging local residents to volunteer. Now, some communities will need more help than others, and I think that a net upshot of that is that we will have uneven provision in some of these community services across the borough. Particularly when I look at the table on page 7, what if people don't have time to volunteer with the cost of living crisis? In my ward, I've got people who've got 2 or 3 jobs. They're working 80 hours a week. That doesn't mean they don't value the services on offer. They just don't have time to give. But they do have kids who would benefit from some of the services. We've just lost a youth service provision at the Dome, for instance, and I'd be really keen to get that back. But where do I go for my volunteers? Also a question, really, in terms of, there's an emphasis on the rural communities, but the urban population is increasing at a much faster rate, and the problems that we have with deprivation are more acute in the urban communities. So we currently have, according to the report, a 74% urban, 26% rural population split. This has changed in the 20 years since I've been on the council. It was closer to 60-40 20 years ago, and I would like to see the emphasis on the increasing populations, because that's where the increase in demand is going to be, and that might not happen when you've got new people coming in who don't know where things are located, the lie of the land, if you will. So, I mean, that's really my concern, really. And just looking at the example of my own ward, but I see this replicate across a lot of other wards. Communities are in increased need of support, not just because of the pandemic, not just because of the cost of living crisis, but also for things like crime, which will feature in many an urban councillor's mailbag and quite a few of the rural councillors as well. And we know that the police, are stretched way beyond what would be a reasonable level of resource stretch. They do their level best. But my ward's had 2 murders in the past 3 years, and my ward's not a particularly rough place, But there are implications for that with things like county lines and are we looking after our young people? And I've just lost a youth service provision. There doesn't seem to be any, it's going to be very difficult to get it back. I'm not hopeful that we will. So any comments anyone will have, and obviously the portfolio holder not being here, I'll quite happily accept written answers. Any comments, answers, much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. As somebody clearly who had quite a lot to do with this in my previous portfolio, what I would add, which perhaps isn't explicit in here, of course, is actually the reality about where we're heading, because a lot of what you characterise is something perhaps that I've seen in the past. And our ambition as an administration is to reduce a lot of that. How? I think there's a real need to encourage people who are running voluntary sector organisations to collaborate across our borough and across our town. And some of that we absolutely will encourage with criteria for our funding that we give them. There's absolutely a need for, and it has happened across some of our communities, but not all, where perhaps one group that is supporting one community has achieved success in funding, but perhaps hasn't worked with other organisations that are doing a very similar task across the rest of the town. So there's a real focus on making sure those organisations that we support, whether that be with resources, whether that be with funding, absolutely look at the needs. It's well evidenced, and a really strong criteria for collaboration, because not only will that develop services, but it will also increase resilience, so that actually if there is an issue in one ward where one service is at threat, well actually that resilience is better placed to deal with it. But absolutely I will carry your thoughts to the portfolio holder so that she can contact you. Right, now moving on to the draft wellbeing strategy, item, sorry, we need to approve it, sorry, I've missed a bit. So we've got the paper in front of us. It means there's a box with a recommendation, which is that as a cabinet, that we note the feedback from members of CEP and the respondents to the consultation and agree the strengthened community strategies for 2022 and 2027. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Brilliant, thank you very much. My mistake. Then moving on now to item 12, which is the draft wellbeing strategy. Again, Councillor McCormick, I have you to speak to this paper.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I really welcome this strategy. And we are living in changing times at the moment, because we now are getting off the ground an integrated care system between the county and the NHS. There is a danger that the borough might see itself as not having any skin in this game, but chatting recently to an ex-county councillor said, what's the borough doing about health? The county have got, a health scrutiny function, but in the past we have engaged with the clinical commissioning group, and I think there's a need for us as a council to do that again. Two questions really. The first one, looking at the SWOT analysis on page 60, one of our weaknesses, obesity. We have higher than average obesity prevalence in Basingstoke and Deane compared to the rest of the country. We have an obesity strategy, but I think it's fair to say that should be informed by government policy, not least their food strategy. How will we bring about lasting change given the shambles that is the government food strategy? That's my first question. Second question is one of the threats, or two of the threats that actually interlink with each other, pressure on health and the digital divide. So my question is, how can we improve things? When we have widely reported problems of people getting to see GPs, and in a special case, operos, getting on for half of Basingstoke's patients are overseen by them now in Beggarwood, Brighton Hill, Southam, Hackwood Surgery, Shakespeare House serving Popley and Norden. You will be aware of the Panorama programme, I'm sure, which featured input from my county colleague, Kim Taylor, who's been doing excellent work, meeting with the CCG and practice managers, holding them to account. But one of Operose's supposed solutions to the problem of GPs and e-consult is to launch a new mobile phone app called Dr. IQ. And I've had many residents complaining about this, and quite a few of them saying, well, I don't have a smartphone. How am I supposed to get questions and answers on health? How do I get to see a doctor? So how do we improve things, given the way things are going with our local primary care health provision?
Thank you very much, Councillor McCormick. I feel the need, as you mentioned, the ICS and the ICB, to declare that, of course, as of Friday, I am a board member of the ICB. Now I've declared that because it is a non-pecuniary interest, I can participate. One of the things I feel the need to say is it's a really interesting time with the Integrated Care Board and the Integrated Care System. And one of the focuses for the board will be for residents that something around health and care looks and feels significantly different. Probably as councillors, we realise that really only matters if the outcomes are better than they are currently. I have the privilege of sitting on the board as somebody who was put forward by our 11 district councils across the county. My focus and the reason why I sit on the board is absolutely to look at those wider determinants of health, which we focus on probably more than any other level of authority, whether that be the NHS or local government. So it's really important, isn't it, that we look at what happens in health and well-being through that district and borough council lens, and to ensure that where we can make a difference, and not only can health and care make a difference, working better together and joining stuff up, but actually there's lots of things that we can do with our community sector, with our voluntary sector, but actually through the assets and resources that we have, but also with the insight that we have looking at health and well-being through our particular street corner and how it impacts on residents. So it's a really interesting point that you raise as far as people wondering what's the role of district and borough councils in integrated care. Structurally, and time will tell, we've never had such a strong role as we do today. So I will remain ever hopeful and optimistic that our role will change. But I really appreciate your comments. Councillor Bean, I don't know whether there's anything else you want to add to the paper.
So Councillor Vox has provided me something to say, so I will, if that's okay, just by way of an intro. So we are fortunate in Basingstoke and Dean to have so many facilities and organisations in the public, private and voluntary sector who already strive to improve residents' health. The draft Wellbeing Strategy and Action Plan was developed following a dialogue within the council, external health professional partners and Basingstoke Voluntary Association. It is influenced by local evidence and data insights. The council is not a health or social care provider, nor is wellbeing a borough council statutory duty. However, our residents' quality of life is a key priority for the council. Working with our local partners and organisations, we're committed to playing our part in enabling residents to live healthy lives by encouraging them to access a range of facilities and support in their local community. The strategy and action plan was considered by CEP on the 15th of June. Feedback was very positive around the 3 key themes identified, and some suggestions have been included within the latest version presented this evening. Those key themes are enabling activities that help to reduce obesity, enabling activities that help to improve mental well-being, and working with our partners to enable the provision of a new hospital and health and wellbeing campus and wider improvements to local health facilities. Our focus is on the promotion of more active lifestyles, which can prevent people becoming ill or support people to improve their health and wellbeing, and working with our health partners to play our part in improving health services in the borough. The feedback from CEP also recognises the action plan is inherently reliant on strong partnership links with providers, organisations and local networks, with discussion notably around roles that each partner and organisation plays, together with meaningful KPIs. Following consideration by Cabinet, the next steps are to communicate the new strategy and action plan with wider key stakeholders and partners that contribute to the actions, and this will be agreed with the comms team. As the action plan is a living, breathing, evolving document, we aim to provide clear updates as we work through the commitments and actions. And to that end, may I suggest a delegation as portfolio holder, not me, to approve final amendments to the action plan following the communication phase. And I'd ask Cabinet to approve the strategy and action plan attached in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Bean. I just want to get to the exact page so I read the recommendation out. I've actually got it open, I think. Oh, Chief said so. Which recommendation of Cabinet that the Cabinet are asked to approve the Wellbeing Strategy and Action Plan, and that we also delegate authority
to the head of contracted resident services in liaison with the portfolio holder, I think is what
Brilliant.
Councillor Vox means.
Perfect, great. Just to get that clarity is really useful. Are we agreed? We are, thank you very much. That's great. Then we move on to item 13, which is the cultural strategy, which is one of my papers. But first of all, Councillor McCormick, you've asked to speak to this. So again, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Leader. Culture is a key driver of the nighttime and weekend economy in Basingstoke and Dean. So I would like to ask, how can we hope to achieve this when we've cut support for the Haymarket and Anvil? And what indications do we have that our venues will get the right support and that we will increase visitor numbers to Basingstoke and Dean at a time when we desperately need to breathe new life into our local economy?
Thank you very much for your comments. I think it's fair to say I have a strong belief, as I think lots of our colleagues do, that arts and culture and heritage has a massive role to play in our nighttime economy, our daytime economy. The reason why we are happy to have such a productive and happy borough. It's a great place to live and work. There are already, as you say, some really strong cultural assets and offers that we have, whether that's demonstrating our history, our heritage, whether that looks at demonstrating the diversity that we have in our population, diversity in our landscapes. We have towns, we have big towns, we have country towns, we have country villages, we have small villages and hamlets. We have a really strong, and do you know what, I think for the first time I can quite confidently say we as a population are much more aware of the creative community that we have living and breathing and doing great bits of work in our borough, and we need to embrace the work that they do quietly from Basingstoke up and down this country and internationally as well. We have some wonderful assets, both natural and built, with some of our arts facilities and leisure facilities. I think this strategy, and it's well documented in here with the consultation that's happened, has been warmly received by those artists, by those organisations, by what I would describe as the arts, culture and heritage ecosystem, and that can only be a good thing for all of our residents. I am very, very excited that we have resisted the temptation to do a local authority report, and we have come up with a creative set of principles to support that ecosystem rather than try to manage it and control it. I'm very excited about having a cultural compact, which we can play a very active role in. But again, we encourage and enable others to be part of and to help flourish, which encourages both the experimentation of the audience and our artists and performers and our organisations, but also to make sure that experience that we all have as people who enjoy arts and culture have. So I absolutely take your points. I think there's a reality for me that says I am also pleasantly surprised that a document from a local authority has had such a warm welcome from the arts and culture ecosystem. And when I look at some of our colleagues in other local authorities, it makes me feel even happier that it's had that welcome that it's had. So just to take the decision, Cabinet colleagues, the recommendation is to adopt the cultural framework and the statement of intent as set out in this report and Appendix 1, to approve and establish a new Basingstoke-Dean Cultural Compact. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So now we go to item 14, which is the capital programme outturn for 2021-22. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Leader. So I have two questions on this paper. The first one is looking at the front page, with a £5.12 million underspend due to slippage, what mitigations are in place for inflation? And secondly, on page 130, I'd just like to get clarification as to why we are seeing such a massive drop in capital receipts from approximately £31 million 2022-23 to £13 million 2023-24, and then it's hovering around the £15 million mark for the subsequent years.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Councillor Isett.
Thank you, Councillor Bound. I will introduce the paper, and that will allow the Chief Financial Officer to help me with some answers to Councillor McCormack's two questions. The report shows capital expenditure of £15.972 million and records significant investment in sports and recreation and parking improvements and play area renovations. But it is an underspend of £5.126 million compared to budget, which is disappointing. We need to do better as it affects the timing of delivery of improvements that benefit our residents. Much of the delay is due to has been caused by the disruption associated with the pandemic and supply and technical support shortages. We are working to improve things, and in April a new finance system was introduced which will enable better performance management and reporting up to the Capital Programme Board. Project managers, that's officers, are going to be held more directly responsible and accountable for the delivery of their projects on time and on budget. A number of changes have been approved under delegated powers since February, including £11,000 of Section 106 to help modernise Oakley's cricket club facilities, £87,000 of Section 106 for improving allotments at Sylvester Close in Norden. It's welcome that that's going to help disabled access. Use of £50,000 of government grant to fund permanent CCTV equipment at the 6 council recycling sites, which I hope will help to deter fly tipping, and more funding for EV charging to the tune of £98,000 in 22-23. There have been a number of budget transfers or veerments, and these are reflected in the report, including replacement funding for electric vehicles for our CSPOs in place of the existing petrol vehicles. Also, a new £280,000 capital scheme for 22-23 for more EV charging points funded from the Climate Change Reserve. Looking ahead, income from the community infrastructure levy will provide a significant future income stream for priority community infrastructure. arising out of new development that takes place in the borough. Forecast SIL receipts are not in this report, but following further work, it is planned that these will feature from 23-24 onwards. EPH committee will be given the opportunity to look at that. In the 4 years ahead, we have a substantial capital programme in excess of £117 million. And it's important that we deliver on these infrastructure improvements identified in our programme to 2025-26 and complete these as far as possible when we say we will for the benefit of our residents. So now I'm going to turn to... yes, are you going to answer those then? Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, just to pick up answering those questions. So as the portfolio holder has added, there are a number of actions in place to actually look at capital spend, profiling, etc. So I won't touch on those. The slippage that's noted, a significant proportion of that is actually a deferred payment for something that's already completed. So there's no inflationary element to that particular one. And some of the other activities that have slippage in them, the contractual amounts already agreed. It's just the works haven't been completed. But in terms of inflation generally, we do hold a certain amount for contingency, and obviously we review every capital scheme on a monthly basis at Capital Programme Board. So if there are any significant changes in the schemes, obviously we would have to report it back to Council for a change in funding, unless alternative funding sources have actually been identified to meet that cost. And in terms of the capital receipts, it's as simple as those receipts have been applied to the capital programme. But if you look at table 10, the very first line in terms of capital receipts, it gives you the assumptions around how much capital receipts we will generate over the period and how much has actually been applied to the programme, which gives us a balance at the end of the programme of circa £20 million of capital receipts. So it's as simple as it's been applied to the programme.
So we're going to need to note various points.
Do you want to read it out?
I wasn't going to read the whole. I think I
Take it as in the papers, unless there's any
I
changes?
think if that's permissible, looking to my right, that we refer to the points that Cabinet requests Council to note, which is on the second page of the report, and then the 3 points that Cabinet requests Council to approve in due course. Is that tolerable?
I got lots of nods from this side. Are we all agreed, Cabinet colleagues? We are. Thank you very much. Right, now, if then we can move on to the revenue outturn report, and if at the same time, Councillor Isaac, I could ask you to pick up the item 6, motion referred from Council on 28th of February, additional support to Basingstoke Citizens Advice Bureau, that would be incredibly helpful.
Thank you. So this is the revenue outturn report for 2021-22. This council can report an overall favourable outcome of £1.01 million against the revenue budget for 21-22. Some planned expenditure has been delayed, resulting in a number of carry-forward recommendations totalling £380,000 into 22-23. This surplus also allows us to help residents on lower incomes facing the emergency caused by the rise in living costs, notably in relation to essentials of food and heating. It is proposed to utilise the remaining £630,000 of this surplus, together with £370,000 from the MTFS risk reserves, to help our most needy residents through the what we're calling the COLAF fund, the Cost of Living Assistance Fund. And the details of that, which have been publicised, are provided in Appendix 2, and I hope that we will get support from Council next week. Because our finances as a council are strong and have been carefully managed over many years, despite COVID and with no borrowing, we're able to respond swiftly to help residents and their families. I'm not aware that any other district council has been able to take a similar initiative to date. I'm pleased that we are able to respond also to the motion passed in council in February seeking reuse of the unspent councillor grants from the last financial year. In this report, we're recommending that during 22-23, that sum of £60,000 will be made available for local organisations to apply where they are giving advice and support in relation to the cost of living increase, and that the money will be awarded in line with existing programme grant policies. So it will be a one-off. Looking ahead, it will require continuing skillful and attentive management to ensure that this council's finances remain secure. There is a lot of uncertainty about, as we all know. We now have to combat not only the ongoing effects of the pandemic, but the highest inflation for 30 years and the impacts of a major war in Europe. We have a strong, dedicated team of officers in our finance team, and I have every confidence that the borough will remain one of the best financially directed councils in the country to the benefit of the residents of Basingstoke and Deane.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Councillor McCormick, I know you wanted to speak to this item.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'm very pleased to see the £1 million provision for the cost of living assistance fund that went under the working title of hardship fund, and I note that that requires a council vote. Presumably that will come on the 14th of July. My question is, at what point will residents be able to benefit from it? And arising from that, another question, what provision can we expect to see for the October bill rises expected as people start to put the heating back on? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Councillor Isaac.
Yeah. Well, assuming that council does give it approval to this, Councillor McCormick, we will get the wheels in motion as quickly as possible, so that we can verify eligibility for these grants. We've got a pretty well practiced team in the council now, able to do quickly and efficiently with grants of all sorts, because there's obviously been quite a bit of this in relation to the pandemic. So that will get underway pretty quickly. I don't know if is there any sort of greater clarity that you can give on that?
So the team are putting in place the provisions now. Obviously, this is alongside the household support fund, so therefore we can use some of the same mechanisms to actually get the funding out to people. Wherever possible, we will also look to try and pay directly to the energy supplier. And in relation to your question around the October uplift, that obviously coincides with the £400 being applied by central government.
But it's fair to say, Councillor McCormick, that will keep this thing under review.
I just wanted to add to that, if I may. Let's be clear. We are incredibly focused on the pressures that our residents are facing. As a leader of this council, I have already pledged to keep council tax frozen for 2023-24, and that is what will appear in the budget papers for consultation this autumn. Also, at the same time, to freeze car parking for 2023-24. The COLAF fund is there for us all to support, and we will keep a very close watchful eye on how, as a financially robust council, we can support our residents in an incredibly difficult time. We have a very strong record of doing that historically, and I know that we will get every councillor's support across this authority to continue doing that. So we are in a fortunate position that we can do it, and we will put all our efforts into doing that. We have the recommendations in front of us. We have 5 for the Cabinet to note, and we have then recommendations 6, 7, 8 and 9 for the Cabinet to request Council to approve. Do I have everybody's agreement? Agreed. Brilliant, thank you very much. Somebody should give me a nudge. Do I need to read that out again? No, we're okay. So I put forward that motion that we go into private record. Can I get the agreement of my Cabinet colleagues? Agreed. Thank you very much. So to enable us to do that, I will ask Juliet to turn the webcast off.